And we're back with some more Washington Capitals franchise mode in FHM 10. And in this one, we have the offseason of year number 9, right after winning the Stanley Cup for the first time in this GM mode. And what a decision to hire Dave Strachan as our new head coach with that motivation rating at 17, tactics at 19, physical preference, aggressive line matching tendency. All of that equaled the win in his first year as our head coach. Unfortunately, he's not great at developing players, so I would be remiss if I did not mention the contributions of Guy Boucher, not DJ Smith, Guy Boucher, who helped develop this team to where it is now in terms of skill. So with that, I think it's time to protect our title here. So before we go ahead, I have offered Gino Carcone with a contract extension. He played very well this season, 61 points during the regular season in 75 games played, 25 goals. He had a breakout year for sure. And during the playoffs, he actually only had 6 points during the playoffs. So that's a bit of a of a drop off compared to what he did points per game wise in the regular season, but he's definitely still deserving of the contract. Now, Kulik I'm holding off on for the time being because as of last checked, yeah, the Connor Bedard situation. I mean, I know we just won the Stanley Cup and it was against Chicago nonetheless, but you know, it's Connor Bedard. If there's any player in this game right now in this save file that I'm willing to overpay for, it's Connor Bedard. So if he goes to free agency, I think we at least have to make an attempt. You know, I mean, of course you can make the argument of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but you know, I think you at least have to consider it. So that's why I'm holding off on signing Kulik, because he does want 5.3. And with the raise that Carcone is going to be getting, we more than likely would not be able to afford Bedard, assuming he goes to free agency, if we sign Kulik as well, right? So I want to keep all our options open going into free agency. And then as for the rest of these guys, Rausa, Engstrom, and Kuhner are going to be auto-qualified, and then Anderson is just getting released because I believe he spent most of last season in the AHL. Yeah, 50 games played in the AHL, and he's angry, so I don't think you'd re-sign anyway. Yeah, he's going to be testing the market. So with that being said, let's make our way to probably June 23rd. I mean, I'm expecting that Chicago is going to re-sign Bedard, but you never know, right? So that's why I want to keep a close eye on this situation. They still haven't signed him. It's June 23rd. They still haven't signed him to an extension. I mean, it's getting close. If they're going to do it, they have to do it soon. Anyway, let's check out our prospects list and see who needs to be signed. I'm not expecting to sign anyone, honestly, because most of the prospects as of the past 3 or 4 years have just been not great. Unfortunately. Oh boy, you got a lot of prospects expiring, and I am interested in signing absolutely none of them. So yeah, that's how it's gone lately. And it's not even because we've been picking late in the first round in the draft. It's just because the past 3 or 4 years, all the good players in the draft have been top 5, maybe top 10 at best. Any pick after that has just been not that good, to be honest. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame there, because I really have not seen many star players enter the league ever since it's like year 5. And I'm almost kind of wondering if it's affecting the overall ability of some of the players in the league, because I'm not seeing many 5-star players. There are not many teams with 5-star players at this point. There's Boston with Burchild. There's Dahlin. Fantilli's the 4.5 star. Carolina's got a few 4.5 stars there, but no 5 stars. Bedard, of course, being a 5-star. Jack Hughes, no one on Columbus. Dallas has Robertson and Leenders being 4.5 star. And then, of course, McDavid and Draisaitl are still going to be 5-star, but they're getting up there in age, right? So, yeah, I'm noticing a huge decline in terms of the overall ability around the league. Adam Fox is a 4.5 star. Stützle is a 5-star. Marner and Johnson are 4.5 star. Pettersson's 5-star. And that's about it. That is really about it. Usually there's a lot more 5-star players. Yeah, I really think it's affecting the quality of the players in the save file. It is June 29th and Chicago has still not offered Bedard. I wonder how much he's asking for. He's got to be asking for 17 mil minimum. That's my guess, because he's currently making almost 15 mil, right? So he's got to be making at least that. All right, time for the awards. So for the Ted Lindsay, Art Ross, and Maurice Richard, it's all Connor McDavid. Still not slowing down at 35 years of age, 114 points a season. For the Lady Byng, you have Uni Heikkinen of Chicago. For the Bill Masterton, you have Brady Tkachuk. For the Mark Messier Leadership Award, also Connor McDavid. For the Jennings Trophy, you have Jesper Wallstedt of Minnesota. For the Hart, between Quinn Hughes McDavid, and Bedard, it is Connor McDavid. For the Conn Smythe, you have Ryan Lynn with 14 points in 20 games played. So despite the fact that we had two 20-point scorers in Misa and Afanasev, it actually goes to Lynn. Interesting. Certainly many players it could have gone to. And for the Calder, Liam Kilfoyle, Riley Budd, and Martin Fruhoff is Liam Kilfoyle of Columbus. And for the Norris, between Quinn Hughes, Rasmus Dahlin, and Evan Bouchard, it is Quinn Hughes with 99 points on the Boston Bruins. And for the Selke, between Rasmus Kupari, Cohen Harris, and Gavin Brindley, it is Rasmus Kupari of Carolina. For the Vezina, between Gabriel Dyke, Jan Bednar, and Tyler Brennan, it is Tyler Brennan of New Jersey. And for the Executive of the Year, between Kevin Coker, Bill Guerin, and Don Sweeney, is Bill Guerin of Minnesota. And for the Jack Adams, between Jeff Halpern, Dan Heinold, and Jim Ryack, it is Jim Ryack of Boston. And here's our season summary. Unfortunately, didn't get Manager of the Year, but we got the rest of the positive categories. No negative categories, of course. And the longevity bonus of 8. Our total season score is at 54 and total career score 194. 10 available points. I think I'm going to keep working on the coaching ratings just in case, but for now, we are going to hold on to Mr. Dave Strachan. All right, so I've got tactics up to 17 now and player motivation up to 14. Continue. So I'm assuming that Chicago is just not re-signing Bedard here. Yeah, they still haven't offered him. So let's see what happens on July 1st. All right, let's see. We're on July 1st now. Is he there? Yes, he is. Connor Bedard is a free agent. How much is he asking for? Okay, well, it's not as much as I thought. That being said, we don't have much money left. We're at 8.6. Our cap hits at 74.8, I believe I saw. 75. So what could we do here? I mean, it says on the cap obligation screen that we have 16.8 in cap space available at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that's just because of the, what's it called? The off-season buffer. So we would need to unload somebody in order to sign Bedard. Not to mention, we would have to pay him, I'm guessing at least $1 million more than what he's currently asking for in order to actually get him, you know? So it's just a matter of figuring out who, if anybody, we move on from here. I don't think it's going to be anybody from the defensive core. I really like our defensive core as it is right now. I don't feel like any of these guys are really overpriced at all. I mean, if anything, the guys here are underpriced, right? Like Levshunov only making 2.3. I mean, granted, that's only for one more year. He's gonna be asking for $5 million in his next contract, but I really like this defensive core. I'm not sure if I would want to break it up. That being said, Galvis wants 4.7. Levshunov, as we saw, wants 5 mil, roughly. Maybe we move on from Galvis, and then not to mention Crystal, Afanasev, Suzdalev all coming up. Misa as well. Deruio. You know what? Let me just see how much all these guys want. Starting with Carrier, 3.2, 34 hits in 69 games played. I don't know. We might be able to move on from him. I mean, that wouldn't clear up much cap space for this year, but you know, we would avoid paying 3.7 to him. Deruio, he wants 4.6. Yeah, these players are starting to get expensive. So I'm glad we won the cup last year, because all of our players are starting to ask for these big contracts now. 140 hits for Deruio and 49 games played. Wow, that's a lot. That's actually a lot in 49 games played. That's more than the year prior, where he had 111 and 67. Now, it is worth noting that Deruio has never played a full season. 40, 62, 52, 67, 49. But he's really, really physical. Toropchenko wants 2.2. I mean, he's 33 though, so Misa 6.3. Ooh, yep, they're getting expensive. What about Afanasev? 7.1. Yeah, we're getting to that point now. Suzdalev 6 mil. I check what Crystal wants yet. 7 mil for 5 years. Oh boy. Yeah, look at all these players on 1 year deals. The salary cap situation next year, I just get the feeling is gonna blow up in our faces. I mean, that's assuming we go past year 10, right? Quinn Hughes is also in free agency. I didn't even notice that till just now. He's a 4-star player now. He's only asking for 7.8. I mean, that's not bad for a 99-point score, but we don't need offense on our back end. We got plenty of that. Oh, I didn't even think about that. What does Ivankovic want? Only 1.3. Okay, that's actually really good. That's very good for him. In fact, I think I'll do that right now. That's a very good deal for Ivankovic, considering how good he's been so far in a backup role. 918 save percentage 2 years ago in 17 games played. And then last year in 23 games played at 919. And then during the playoffs, I mean, he only played 1 game, and that was last year. So can't really judge him there. But still he's been solid. So that's a really good deal for him. I mean, I love the way Derurio plays, but I don't know. 4.6 might just be a little much for him. I mean, he was great in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. So maybe that is worth it. I don't know. This past playoff run really, it was an outlier for him for sure. So I'm not sure if he can keep that up, you know. But he was great. I won't lie. So what to do? Another guy who was really good in the playoffs this year was Michael Misa, tied for the team lead in scoring. But I don't know, is he worth what he's asking for? Because he only had 46 points this past season. And what was his ice time? He had 1330. I'm assuming he was our first line center the majority of the year. And if he only had 46 points as our first line center, then I don't know. Was he on the power play? I'm guessing so, just based off that amount of minutes. I mean, he was, but it doesn't look like he did too well. Only 4 power play goals and 1 power play assist. That's compared to 12 and 23 the year prior, right? So it seems like a large portion of Misa's success can be attributed to the power play, or at least it was 2 years ago. Last year, not so much. Now, I don't know if he was on the power play all year last year or not, but I would guess so, just based off that amount of minutes, especially when compared to the year prior. He had less minutes and a lot more power play points. So I don't know. I don't know about Misa. Can you? The part I'm struggling with is, can Misa, can all these guys really replicate their performance in the postseason from last year? And is that performance worth that kind of rate, the kind of raise that they're all getting, you know? Like our salary situation is going to go from 75 mil to probably 90 mil. That's my guess. Assuming we were to sign everyone we wanted to sign, right? Here's what I'll say about Misa, though. He is not simulated like a first-line center most of the time. So, I don't know. Despite the Stanley Cup win, this is a pretty confusing group of players that we have here. I mean, I know there's not really a point in doing this. In comparing Bedard with Misa, I mean, there's really no comparison. But I just wanted to see for reference. Misa is actually the better stick checker, but Bedard is obviously better most other places. So I can't deny that Bedard would be an awesome get. I just don't know. I don't know how to fit him in without the cap situation going crazy next year. I mean, I guess I know what I need to do. Like, I'm going to say it would probably involve trading Misa, probably Derurio as well, because he's just making like 4.6. I don't know. That's a little much for him. He's only ever gotten 21 points during the regular season, his career high this past season. But during the playoffs, he was amazing. So that's where I'm struggling in deciding whether or not to move on from these players and then sign Bedard. Maybe Suzdalev. I don't know. Like, he hasn't exactly been consistent. I mean, he didn't do too bad last year. 43 points in 80 games played and 18 points during the playoffs. But again, it's the matter of he's asking for 6 mil, and so is basically every other player. Fanasev's asking for 7.1. Misa's asking for, what was it, 6.3? Yep. Crystal, I believe, was asking for 7 mil. Yep. So it's a lot to consider here. 5 mil for Levshunov, 4.6 for Derurio. Like, that's a lot. Yeah, I think we trade Galvis. He wants 4.7. That's a little too much for him, I think. He's been good, but again, it goes back to that same issue of there's just way too much to consider. And that's just way too much relative to his overall impact on this team. I mean, he's a good depth player, but I don't know about 4.7. Like, I feel like that's money that would be better spent on Bedard, right? Then again, freeing up that 2.4 that Galvis is currently making is barely going to put a dent in the amount that we would need to free up to sign Bedard now. It would have to be Galvis, Derurio, I think would have to be on their way out if we want any chance of signing Bedard and then keeping the majority of our core together. I don't know. I might need some time to think on this. This is going to be a huge offseason. There's just a lot to consider here with the upcoming contracts of Afanasev, Suzdalev, Crystal, Misa, of course, Levshunov, Derurio. Toropchenko's not going to cost too much. Carrier, I think, wanted 3.2. That might be a little too much for him. Galvis wanted 4.7. Yeah, that's too much for him too. But we're going to have to move on from some of these players no matter what. I mean, there's always the possibility that Bedard will decline us, right? I mean, we saw that with Byfield and with Fantilli, but the stakes are certainly much higher here. I think you might even have to consider trading Spencer Knight. And as unpredictable as he can be, he did win us the Stanley Cup last year. All these players won us the Stanley Cup last year, so that's like it's a situation where I see huge opportunity to improve the team. At the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But also, there are certain players who we're just not going to be able to afford beyond this year no matter what, like Galvis, DeRuio, Carrier as well. All right, so here's what we're doing regarding the situation with Bedard. There are a few players who I have decided that I'm not re-signing no matter what. Galvis, DeRuio, and Carrier are not going to be re-signed for next year. Because Carrier, obviously we saw before, wants 3.2. DeRuio wants 4.6. And then Galvis wants 4.7. So that's too much relative to all of their roles on the team. Like, I'm not saying they're bad players by any stretch, but with the amount of other contracts we have coming up, like Suzdalev, Misa, Afanasov, Crystal, not to mention Levshunov, I don't think we'll be able to afford any of those guys regardless. So we're going to go ahead and trade all three of them right now. Carrier has been pretty good for us for a couple of years. 32 points his first year, 30 points last year. His grade was better in year number one, or his year number one anyway, compared to this past year with his 57 grade. Not much of a hitter this past season, so that's part of the reason why I'm okay with giving him up, in addition to his contract, of course. As for Galvis, he's been a pretty solid defenseman. He had 22 points last season, 36 the year before, grade constantly in the low 60s, so he's at least, NHL serviceable. 99 hits last season, so he was physical, but again, with him, I just don't feel like the price tag justifies his impact, And as for DeRuio, his career high is 21 points. Now, he was on pace for a higher last season. He only had 49 games played. But on the same note, he hasn't had a full season ever in his 5 years here in the NHL. His most games played is 67. And he's a great hitter. He loves hitting. So I love that about him. I love his play style. But he's asking for way too much compared to what he should be making. Like, I'm not paying 4.6 for someone who has been practically guaranteed to not even finish the season. So I just don't think that justifies the price tag. We could probably find a much cheaper physical guy out there. I mean, of course, that's assuming we have the cap space for that after after this offseason. All right, so we are going to be sending DeRuio, Carrier, and Galvis along with a 4th and 5th round pick for this upcoming draft, in exchange for Tyler Reeder from the Colorado Avalanche. He's only 20 years of age, so you figure, why would Colorado want to give up a 20-year-old as they are in a rebuild? Well, they wouldn't necessarily. He's not on their trade block, but they are getting 5 assets back in return. I think that's a fair deal. It's not like these guys are bad players, These are all these three are very serviceable players in their own right. So it's just that we can't afford them, And then in addition to the 4th and 5th round picks, which, the draft's not really much these days, but regardless, I think they're still getting a pretty good deal here. Reeder's a solid hitter, solid checker, 18 aggression rating, good physical ratings in there as well. Obviously not going to be much for offense, but that's fine. You know what? Just to sweeten the deal, I'll throw in a 3rd. Instead of a 5th. It'll be a 3rd and a 4th, along with DeRuio, Carrier, and Galvis. I think that is a pretty fair deal, if you ask me. So DeRuio, Carrier, and Galvis at 50% of his salary retained. I didn't want to have to retain the salary, but actually, let me see if I could go a little lower. Yeah, it's just that they were like slightly above payroll. Okay, 15% will work. So DeRuio, Carrier, Galvis at 15% of his salary retained, and a 3rd and a 4th for Tyler Reeder offer trade. We'll see if it goes through. Just for estimation purposes, I'm going to say we're getting roughly $6 million back in cap space. I mean, obviously, there's the player we're getting back to, but he's on a minor league deal, so I'm not counting that for right now. So after that goes through, we should have enough for Mr. Bedard. As it is right now, we have 16.8 in cap space, but remember, I believe that's with the offseason buffer. So here's what we'll do. He wants a no movement clause, so this is gonna be a long-term investment for 6 years. I'm not messing around here. I will give him 16 mil right off the bat. In fact, I might even go a bit higher. I want to make sure this works. Because here's the thing, right? We were talking before about keeping the same roster together and, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. But the second we trade Galvis, DeRuio, and Carrier, the idea of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of just goes out the window, And again, that was going to happen regardless. Yeah, I think we can do this. As long as we can win another Stanley Cup this upcoming year, the repercussions of the future should be worth it. No other team, no other competitive team is willing to pay you this, okay? Clearly Chicago wasn't. Like they didn't re-sign you, and they were the other team that got to the Stanley Cup final. If you don't accept this, then I don't know what to say. So there you go. Connor Bedard has been offered $16.25 million per year for 6 years with a no movement clause. That is the only offer I'm making in all free agency. That's it. we don't have space for anything else. So with that, let's simulate ahead. Do the draft order announcement and see if we get Connor Bedard. Come on, Connor. I offered you over $1 million more than what you were asking for. And there is no, I swear there is no other competitive team in the league that would be willing to offer you that. Just take it. No questions asked. And you know what? I'm taking those rejections from Byfield and Fantilli earlier as a sign that this should happen. And it appears Colorado has declined our offer. It looks like we're gonna have to adjust the cap retention on Galvis a little bit. All right, so the only way to make this work is by going Deruio at 40% of his salary retained, Carrier, and then Galvis at 35% of his salary retained, plus the third and the fourth. So that's retaining a little bit more salary than I would have liked, but I think it's still worth it, you know? So offer trade, let's hope they accept this time. And time for the draft lottery. Let's see who ends up where. At 16, you have Seattle, followed up by Columbus, Buffalo, St. Louis, Vancouver, Tampa, Anaheim, Philly, Detroit, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Florida. Colorado moves up. LA at number 3, Colorado at 2, and Nashville gets the first overall pick. All right, draft time. So you have Marian Hossa as the first overall pick, projected first overall pick anyway. You never know with this game, right? But he does have the 5-star potential, so I'm guessing he's going first overall. Actually, let me just see for reference. Where was he ranked? Okay, good. He was he was ranked at number 1 and he was taken at number 1. One of the rare times where the mock draft is actually correct. All right, let's simulate ahead to our pick at number 32, of course. And there is 1 2.5-star potential available. Looking kind of rough, Martin Hubacek. But you know what? At this point, it's year 10. Let's just take him. Martin Hubacek, welcome to the Washington Capitals. I think I'll take this guy, Yuri Loshek. Not particularly great at anything, but he's at least got some decent ratings in there. So we'll take him. And let's take Stankiewicz, the goaltender. Pick number 70 now. Sidorov, I guess. There's really not much. I mean, this is definitely better than last year's draft as far as players who I think might have the potential to crack the NHL roster, but still not great. Rob Mikulik at number 72, and then I don't know. We're starting to get down to the 1-star abilities now, or 1-star potentials rather. Yeah, I think I'll pass on the rest. At this point, I kind of just want to see what the decision on Bedard is. I mean, there's no way any other team. Okay, good. There it is, boys. We got him. Connor Bedard is now a Washington Capital. There it is. The first line center that we have been missing basically this entire GM mode is here. There you go, Caps fans. So not only do we get the Stanley Cup, but in that same offseason, we get one of the top players in the league in Connor Bedard. Now, granted, our salary is $91 million now, so we have to hope that this trade with Colorado goes through, and then, in fact, we're probably gonna have to make another trade after that. But you know what? Now that we have Bedard, we can... I mean, I think it's got to be Misa, right? Like, he's asking for 6.3 and he's currently making 4.2. Trading someone like Mata wouldn't free up enough cap to be below the cap ceiling by the time the season starts. It's got to be Misa. Yeah, Misa's got to be on his way out here. I mean, it sucks because he was one of our draft picks, I believe, from year 2, was it? Or year 1? Yeah, I think that was year 2, 2025. Yeah, that was year 2. But unfortunately, he just has not really panned out the way I hoped he would. At this point, Mata's a 3.5-star ability. He's looking at least better than he did previously. He had 34 points last season, and he progressed as the season went on. And he's got some really nice ratings on him too. I think if he's in a solid second-line center role, I think he'll really flourish. But unfortunately, he hasn't really gotten that yet due to, you know, AI coaching issues. So I'm hoping that this year's a little different, given that Bedard will, without a doubt, no questions asked, be our first line center. Because Misa was still, last season, there were times where I saw Misa on the 4th line still. It's like the running joke never ended with this guy. So we have to, I think we just have to free him from his shackles and trade him to another team at this point. Gino Carcone was also good in the second line role last year. So I think, you know, yeah, we got center locked up at this point. Misa just needs to move on. And I think I'll probably call up Rausa as the 4th line center. And it sucks too for Misa because he was one of our best players in that playoff run. Like he had such a good run en route to the Stanley Cup. And the season beforehand, he had 75 points. Now that was with, I would imagine, ample power play time because he had 35 power play points that year. But overall, he doesn't really cut it as a first line center, you know? So we'll be trading Misa to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for 2 first-round picks and a second. I think that's a pretty good deal. I mean, their current status is win now, so they're clearly willing to trade away those picks. in exchange for a center like Michael Misa. Center is on their weakness list. So Misa for 2 first-round picks and a second, offer trade. All right, so the trade with the Colorado Avalanche has been accepted. So DeRuio at 40% of his salary retained, Carrier and Galvis at 35% of his salary retained, a third and a fourth for Tyler Reeder, complete trade. And the Minnesota Wild have accepted our trade as well. So Misa going to Minnesota in exchange for 2 firsts and a second. Thank you for your service, Michael Misa, but it's time to move on. Complete trade. And with that, we are, oh man, 83.49. That is right up against the cap ceiling, I believe. And the unfortunate part is we only have 19 players on the roster. So, oh, wait a minute. Rouse is not even signed. I didn't even notice that. What does he want? 1.1? All right, that's not bad. But, you know, with recent events, we need to be as cheap as possible here. For now, I'm going to call up Williams and Stesko and probably DeMay. So we have 22 on our roster now. 86.2 is our salary. As for who else will have to move out, depending on what happens, we may end up trading Knight. Because again, another guy who's just way too inconsistent for my liking, as seen by his past numbers. I mean, he was good last season when he needed to be. Obviously, we won the Stanley Cup. He's 31. He's got a lot of money on his deal. And Ivankovic has seemed very good so far. Granted, he hasn't played any more than 23 games in one season yet. But in the 40 NHL games that he's played, 918, 919 save percentage, he's looking pretty good so far. And then on top of that, he's extended for 1.3 for the next 2 years after this. So I think you got to give Ivankovic at least a look at the starter's position, right? Because I think he can do it. I really do. It's taken him a while to get here to this point, but I really think he can hold down a solid starter's position and take over for Knight with how he has played in the past. So that actually might be something we do as soon as the preseason. But I think that is enough for now. It has certainly been a very eventful offseason, so let's go ahead up to the Hall of Fame inductions, and then we will get to the preseason and end things off. So into the NHL Hall of Fame for this year is Evgeny Malkin, Andrei Kopitar, Joe Pavelski, and Sergei Bobrovsky. So neither Backstrom nor Carlson make it in this year, unfortunately. All right, for the preseason, I'm going to send Knight to the AHL just so that the coach is forced to use both Ivankovic and Jonathan Engstrom, who is a prospect goaltender of ours who I just signed over the offseason, as he has a 2-star ability now. So assuming both of them do well during the preseason, then I think we can roll with both of them. And especially with the past stats of Ivankovic, I really think he'll be a solid starter. It's just Engstrom that I need to know about, really. So before we end things off, I'm going to go through the preseason and see how that goes. Yeah, Engstrom was solid. 919 save percentage in 3 games played during the preseason. I think both him and Ivankovic are ready to go. I think Ivankovic is ready to take over the starter's position. So I'm not going to make the trade now. It's already been a very, very eventful episode. So I think we'll end things off here. And the next one, we will, first of all, trade Spencer Knight. And then we will get through the regular season simulation of year number 10 with Connor Bedard as your newest Washington Capital.